Hi, and welcome to episode number 2 of The Art of Multi-Site Kubernetes. Today we will be looking at actually a single Kubernetes cluster, because before we start to stretch persistency across different sites, we first need to learn about persistent storage to begin with. So here I'm focusing on a single Kubernetes cluster that has 3 control nodes, 3 worker nodes, a pretty default setup. And first thing we should do is add persistent storage into this cluster. So if I add a storage array, right? So here, let's say I have a storage array. So there, that's my storage. Of course, I can carve out storage and I need to surface that up into Kubernetes. But I'm really looking for an automated way of doing that. In the early days, Kubernetes used to have this thing called inline drivers or in-stream drivers that were like default iSCSI, NFS, and fiber channel drivers. But that was all static because a developer, or actually an operator, right, a storage operator, needed to come in here, carve out the storage, surface that up into Kubernetes before the developer could actually grab hold of that piece of storage and use it. So since then, something really interesting has been introduced called the CSI driver. So we will be using this thing called the CSI driver, or the container storage interface, in order to make to have like a more automated way, or a self-service way actually, of deploying persistency into Kubernetes. So the way that works is that first we will deploy a new namespace. So we will deploy a new namespace and we'll call that namespace CSI in this case. And then we need to install a CSI driver. So that sits here as a number of containers actually. So here we have CSI and here we have another instance of CSI because we want to make sure that it can survive a worker node failure. And what the CSI driver does is it plugs into a framework that's delivered by Kubernetes itself. So if a developer comes in, let's have a developer, right? Developer comes in and using YAML, he'll talk down to CSI using YAML and says, please get me some storage. So Kubernetes will forward that to the CSI driver, hand it over to this specific CSI driver that belongs to this particular storage array that you see down here. And what the CSI driver will do, it will use the API to talk down here, right? Through an API, it will talk down to this storage, say, hey, please carve out the storage that was requested. Storage gets carved out, and then it gets surfaced up in here as a PV, a persistent volume. So this persistent volume now sits here in the Kubernetes layer. And next, of course, the developer shoots out another piece of YAML code. Of course, you could combine that into one as well. But let's say that he shut down a separate piece of YAML code to actually deploy a pod that actually binds that or claims that storage. So outside of the namespace, he will deploy like container 1, and he will specify that please connect this in here. So now we will see this surfaced as a PVC. So now we have a PVC that's claimed by a container. The container can use that PVC that boils down to the storage array directly under control of CSI. And as you can see, CSI driver here in its separate namespace basically is control plane only, right? It's not part of the data path. The storage connects directly into the worker node and surfaces that up directly into the container. So that is the way that storage is actually surfaced up into Kubernetes using the CSI driver. So in the next episode, we'll be looking at extra modules that Dell has put on top in order to make this a bit more fluent and I would say a bit more enterprise ready. So stay tuned for the next one and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.